Hi, everyone. Welcome to Atomic Ambition, the podcast version of the newsletter. So Atomic Ambition, the podcast, is where we talk about, well, we're going to take a self-help book and we're going to dive into one suggestion that could help us become 1% better each day. And today we're talking about timeframes and deadlines and why we need more of them, not less of them. So let's talk about books, first of all. I mean, you can see behind me, you can see there are lots of books. I'm a fan of real books. When I tend to buy myself a book, I buy a real book. I'm not a fan of electronic books, Kindle books. But strangely enough, the first book that I have chosen to talk about in this new podcast is a Kindle book. It's not a book I physically have, which is a real shame because I like to hold books in my hand when I'm reading them. I don't actually have a copy of this book. I got it on Kindle. Don't ask me why. I think I wanted to read it straight away rather than wait for a few days for it to arrive in the post. So I Kindled it. And the book the book we're diving into is The 12-Week Year, which I don't know exactly when it was written. It's not a recent book. It's not like, just come out. It's been out for quite a while. By Brian Morgan and Michael Lennington. So it's all about timeframes, reducing timeframes, and taking action rather than waiting. Now, when it comes to sort of, work and timeframes, the one thing I always think about is Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is this law that states that work will always fill the time allocated for the work. Even if it's a 5-minute job, if you give somebody an hour to do it, it'll take them an hour. Work always tends to sort of fill the time that's allocated for it, which for me, as I'm not a master procrastinator, but in the past I have been a procrastinator, always waiting for the deadline to be there before actually taking any action. Cyril Parkinson, I think he wrote this article back in the 90s. So the idea of Parkinson's law has been around for decades. But it's also interesting that the original law has developed, I suppose, because people talk about Parkinson's law of triviality. So that means within organizations, people tend to focus too much on the trivial things rather than the things that matter most. We pay more of our attention, we give more time and we spend more time on the trivial rather than the important. I think that's a form of procrastination myself. I'm possibly guilty of that. I'm not totally sure. But there's also what's known as social loafing within an organization, within a group, within a team, which is, again, it's based on Parkinson's sort of ideas that as a member of a team, we tend to give less to that project or to that task. If we were doing something for ourselves, for example, we might give 100% of our effort, but because we're part of a team, we feel we don't have to give 100%. We can just give, 70 or 80%. And within a team, that's usually okay. No one really notices we've not given 100%. There is another law which I wanted to mention, Hofstadter's law. Now, I know Hofstadter's law, this is, I suppose, the fallacy or the tendency that most organizations seem to have of not learning from past mistakes. You had a project which ran over time and it ran over because you underestimated the time to complete the project. But when you start the next project, you just automatically presume, no, we can do it within the allotted time frame. So there's this fallacy or this idea that we don't learn from our past mistakes when it comes to timeframes and deadlines. Yeah. So those are my general thoughts on deadlines and timeframes. A few other thoughts I want to share with you as well. I spoke about procrastination. I mentioned procrastination. If you haven't seen the Tim Urban TED Talk, I think it's called Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator. In that TED Talk, he will introduce you to creatures, people we're familiar with, the instant gratification monkey, and my favorite, the panic monster. The panic monster is my best friend, I think. So anyway, the 12-week year, for me, the 12-week year, I'm going to say it has been a game changer for me, particularly in 2025. I know we're still very early in 2025, at least when I'm recording this. It's the second week of January when I'm recording. But for me, reading the 12-week year has been a kind of a game changer for me because rather than focusing on an end result, something I want to achieve, which is many, many months in the future, potentially, what I'm doing is focusing on the actions that will actually get me there in the first place. And the 12-week year forces you, or the idea is that you focus on those actions and you take action, because your deadline is not in 12 months' time. Your deadline is in 12 weeks. So it's basically time shifting. You're bringing everything forwards. You're bringing your deadlines forwards rather than pushing your deadlines backwards. You're time shifting, you're bringing everything forwards. If anybody works in the world of sales, you will be familiar with bringing things forward. You're always trying to get your customers, your prospects to make the decision quicker. You don't want the order to be placed next month, you want it this month, so that you not just meet your target, you go massively over your target and you get big slap on the back, big pat on the back from your boss and earn more commission, more salary. Yeah, so time shifting is not a new thing. In lots of industries, time shifting is something that's always happened, I think. The sales industry, if you're working sales, your boss is always trying to get you to get that customer to make the decision now. Don't put the decision off until next month. Yeah. But deadlines basically, give us urgency, and urgency encourages action. That's the thing that I have taken from the book, The 12-Week Year. I wish I had a copy that I could hold up. I'm sorry I don't. Deadlines give us urgency, and urgency encourages the action. It's true with me. The panic monster encourages or forces me to take action eventually. Yeah. And personally, in 2025, I have been busier than ever. I have filled my time with lots of new projects, including this new podcast. And I'm doing this because I read the book, The 12-Week Year. Also, I can't remember where this comes from now, but another idea, it comes from another book, but it's not a book that I read. I don't think it was a book that someone else read, my wife read, and she suggested this to me. And the idea is, when you think your schedule is full and you cannot literally fit any more into your schedule, add another task. But make the task something that is fun and interesting and exciting. And for me, this podcast is fun, exciting, and interesting. And I honestly don't have time to do this. But somehow, because it's fun and interesting for me and I want to do it, I found the time. The time has come, miraculously appeared. So I have more time than I really thought I had, I suppose. Yeah, if I just think back to 2024, a lot of my time was spent procrastinating. Yeah, I'm guilty. I'm not afraid to admit that I am a recovering procrastinator. That's what I'm going to describe myself that from now. I'm a recovering procrastinator. Okay, so the 12-Week Year, if you haven't read the book, I'm going to highly recommend that you buy the book. I've got a review of the idea of deadlines and this book on LinkedIn. I'll include a link to my LinkedIn profile on this podcast somewhere. I don't know how, because it's my first episode. So I don't really know what I'm doing, if I'm honest. Well, this is my first episode. So somewhere within this podcast, there will be a link to the article I wrote on LinkedIn. I highly recommend that you buy the book, The 12-Week Year. And if the only thing that you get out of it is taking action and doing things sooner rather than later, then it will improve you as a human being at least 1% this year. Or even if it's just 1% each day, by the end of this year, you are much better than you were. But even if you only get 1% improvement this year through reading that one book, I highly recommend. And I want to leave or end with another thought for you. I'm a big Douglas Adams fan. I love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and a lot of other of his work. And a famous quote from Douglas Adams, "Time is an illusion. Lunchtime doubly so." Time is an illusion. Lunchtime doubly so. And I want to leave you with that quote. I think it's a beautiful quote, a beautiful thing to think about when it comes to time. Time is an illusion. Deadlines only exist because we create them. The deadline is not real. It's an illusion. Time is an illusion, but also lunchtime doubly so. The idea that you have to have your lunch at a specific time each day is crazy. Have your lunch when you want your lunch. Yesterday, I had my lunch at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Wonderful idea. I was hungry. I wanted my lunch. It wasn't breakfast. I'd already eaten breakfast, but I wanted my lunch. I was hungry and I had lunch at 10 o'clock. And talking of which, it is almost lunchtime as far as I'm concerned. It's about 1 o'clock now when I'm finishing this. So it is lunchtime, even though time is an illusion. For me, it's my lunchtime. So I'm going to end on that and go and have my lunch. Bye.